My husband stood in front of me and thrust a piece of paper at me.
I'm remarrying my 20-something girlfriend, and I'm divorcing you, old woman.
His expression seemed somewhat satisfied, yet at the same time I could feel him looking down on me. The only thing I understand is this: he's not joking. And from the look on his face, he's really serious about getting a divorce. Is it really okay?
Oh, I don't have any business with old people like you anymore.
I see. If you say so, there's no helping it.
Well, I'll pay you alimony, so go ahead and embrace a lonely old age by yourself.
While wearing a smug, unpleasant smile, my husband is observing my reaction. However, he still doesn't know that his words haven't caused any damage to me at all. Divorce? That was within my expectations from the beginning. I'll grant your wish and let us get divorced, so don't regret it, okay? My name is Laura, 57 years old. I'm just an ordinary part-time housewife who works at a bank. I work at a local bank, but it's quite profitable. With over 30 years of service, I earn more than enough income every month. My husband, Jeffrey, works for a regular company, but just between us, I actually have a higher salary. Once, while cleaning my husband's room, I happened to come across his payslip and found out that I earn more than him. I haven't told Jeffrey about this. Nowadays, it's common for couples to both work, and the term house husband has become normal. There are more households where the wife earns more, and such situations have become more prevalent. However, in our generation, the fact that the wife earns more tends to hurt the husband's pride. Until now, I haven't been asked about my income, and we've been managing our living expenses by splitting everything equally. So, there was never a need to explicitly disclose my income. Besides, as a couple, we have never been in financial trouble. Due to both of us working and our only son, Timothy, already being a working adult, and also having started living on his own, our expenses have significantly decreased. Is it really possible for the cost of living to change so much with just one less person? Indeed, the grocery expenses vary significantly with or without a growing young man in the household. My husband and I, as we've aged, have reduced our food intake, so the money spent on groceries has decreased compared to before. Over the past few years, we've been able to save a considerable amount. In a sense, it's just my husband and me in our daily lives, with our son occasionally dropping by. I used to think that this peaceful life would continue like this in the future. However, in places I wasn't aware of, a sense of discomfort had slowly started to emerge. One day, I returned home from work and began preparing dinner. But my husband didn't come home. Normally, he returns while I'm in the middle of preparing dinner, and we eat together. But for some reason, on this day, even though dinner was ready, there was no sign of my husband returning. Overtime, I wonder? But there hasn't been much overtime in the past few years. There are days when I go back on weekends and come back late. During weekdays, I sometimes go out for drinks with colleagues. He always sends some message like, "I'll be late due to a drinking party," or "I don't eat dinner." But why is there nothing today, of all days? Feeling anxious, I sent a message to my husband, but there was no reply, not even a read receipt. I made several attempts to call, but there was only the ringing tone, and no one answered. This has never happened before. What on earth could be going on? I hope it's not something like an accident, right? My chest felt uneasy, and a cold sweat started to trickle down. I decided to wait until the date changed, and if he still didn't come back, I thought I would contact our son. As I waited with these thoughts, it was almost midnight when I heard the sound of the front door opening. "Welcome back, honey." I hurriedly approached, and my husband looked startled when he saw me. But quickly, he returned to his usual expression and opened his mouth, saying,
Were you awake?
Even though he didn't contact me, let alone respond, making such a carefree remark irritated me, and I was giving my husband a pointed look. Were you awake? Well, obviously, right? There was no contact, and you didn't answer the phone. I was even considering contacting Timothy because I was so worried.
That's an exaggeration. It's not a big deal to make such a fuss just because there was no response for a few hours.
If you had mentioned something about stopping by or asking about plans beforehand, I wouldn't have been so frantic. It's worse to be late without any contact, isn't it?
I just went for a drink with a colleague for a bit. It happened spontaneously, so what can you do?
If that's the case, couldn't you have sent a simple message like, I'll be late?
You're being annoying. Don't nag me about such trivial things.
My husband raised his voice, let out a heavy sigh, and went to the bedroom. He didn't even touch the meal or step into the bath that I had prepared with care. Over the past few years, whenever something displeased him, he started raising his voice like this. I used to think it was because of age, but regardless, it felt so unreasonable, or I don't know how to describe it. Even though it's been 30 years since we got married, my heart was wearing thin. At that time, as I had a day off from work, I decided to go shopping alone for the first time in a while. The reason for this was that my son's birthday is approaching next month. At my age, buying a birthday present for my son feels a bit unusual, and I can't help but question it. But it's a big day, once a year, and I want to celebrate it with all my heart. I headed to the department store to look for a birthday present for my son. My husband also said he was going out today, so it would be just me for the night. On my way home, I got takeout food and came home to find, to my surprise, my husband already there. You're home? I'm sorry, I thought you were alone and I only had dinner for... My husband said,
I have something important to tell you,
and turned his attention to me. From the tone of voice, it doesn't sound like it's that light. I put down my bags and sat down right in front of my husband. So, about the finances?
Well, you see, I'd like you to reduce the amount I contribute to the living expenses for a while.
Huh? Why all of a sudden?
No, it's just, when you go out for a drink with your subordinates, the older guy pays, right? So it's been a little tough around here.
Did you spend that much money on drinks?
Look, even Timothy has moved out, and we have some extra money now, right? So on weekends when I go out with colleagues and subordinates, I end up covering the expenses, being the older one.
It's true that my husband likes to make himself look good, but if it affects the family's finances, it's not worth it. The fact that my husband is talking like this means he must really be in need of money. Because until now, I have rarely been approached about money. Experiencing a mix of emotions, I observed my husband wearing a genuinely apologetic expression. It stirred a tight feeling in my chest. Letting out a sigh, I spoke to my husband. Fine, but in return, I want you to think a bit more before spending money from now on.
Yeah, I got it. I'll be careful.
Absolutely, okay? Just because Timothy isn't around doesn't mean we have unlimited money. I want to save for the future, including building up our savings.
Yeah, you're right. I'll be more careful from now on. Thank you so much.
With a cheerful demeanor, my husband headed to the kitchen and started drinking beer. Given his sudden change in attitude, I couldn't help but doubt whether he was truly reflecting on his actions. However, since I had accepted my husband's request, I couldn't say anything. From that day on, my husband started coming home late almost every night. He would provide reasons like going out for drinks with a junior colleague or invited by a coworker, but I couldn't verify their authenticity. Then one day, my son Timothy called to thank me for his birthday present.
Hey, Mom. I don't want to say this, but...
Huh? What do you mean?
I mean, Dad wasn't the type to go out drinking that frequently, even when he was younger, right? Considering that he's less tolerant of alcohol now, why would he go out drinking so frequently?
Yeah, that's true. He only drinks a can of beer occasionally at home.
I don't want to doubt him as his son, but from what I've heard, something seems suspicious. Can I look into it a bit?
Investigate? How would you do that?
I know someone who works at a detective agency. I'm going to ask them for a little favor.
It felt somewhat uncomfortable to investigate my husband's behavior, but my son suggested it. And considering that I also had some doubts, I decided to leave it to my son. 2 weeks later, I would hear shocking news from my son.
Mom, it seems Dad has been frequenting a strip club and spending a lot on a favorite dancer.
My son's words left me quite shocked. I never thought my husband would do such a thing, and my mind went blank. I was puzzled, and my son calmly continued his story.
Dad seems to have one-sided feelings for that dancer. It's on an abnormal level.
Unbelievable. Making me bear the living expenses with false reasons? And meanwhile he's lavishing money on a favorite dancer?
Yeah, it might affect your life, Mom, if things continue like this. So, I think you should consider your various options. If you have nowhere to go, my apartment is available.
Thank you, Timothy. I'll think about it for a bit. After ending the call, I took a deep breath. While regaining composure, my anger towards my husband, who I couldn't put into words, exploded. I couldn't forgive him for deceitfully lying to me for his own convenience. I can't believe he would contribute money to a dancer at that age without thinking twice about it. I decided to thoroughly corner him. I told my son I'd give it some thought, but I already reached a decision. The next day, I started working and preparing for divorce at the same time. The first thing I did was secure a new home. The fact that my husband was spending money on a dancer had been confirmed by the detective my son hired, and my son had directly visited the dancer to confirm that there was no affair between her and my husband. According to my son's account, it seemed like she was actually bothered by my husband's actions. Whether it was true or not was no longer of any concern. What was crucial for me was that my husband had lied to me, visited a strip bar, and spent enough on the dancer to affect our household finances. This could be a significant reason for divorce. Indeed, when I consulted a law firm, it seemed there were quite a few cases of divorces due to a partner's extravagant spending. In other words, if I could gather proper evidence, I could divorce favorably without considering my husband's intentions. Confident in this, I rented an apartment near my workplace so that I would be ready for divorce whenever it happened. My son's contributions of valuable information and evidence enabled the lawyer to say,
"Let's proceed with the formal procedures."
I was planning to talk to my husband about it this weekend, or so I thought. One day after I had finished dinner around 7 p.m., he returned home. He came home unusually early, and just when I thought that, he stood in front of me and handed over a single sheet of paper. It was, of all things, a divorce agreement. I shifted my gaze to my husband's face, and he opened his mouth wide.
"I'm remarrying my 20-something girlfriend, and I'm divorcing you, old woman."
His expression seemed somewhat satisfied, yet at the same time I could feel him looking down on me. The only thing I understand is that he's not joking. From the look on his face, he's really serious about getting a divorce. I was on the verge of bursting into laughter, but desperately responded, "Divorce? Are you really saying that seriously?"
"Yeah, sorry, but I've got an incredibly cute girlfriend now."
"Girlfriend?"
"Shocked, huh? But don't think badly of me. It's your fault for aging."
He laughed loudly and began to denigrate my appearance, taking the opportunity to insult me. Despite not being one to talk, various emotions welled up in me, and before anger could take over, I found myself more exasperated. I thought there was no more value in continuing this conversation. That's what I believed as I quietly asked him, "Are you really okay with this?"
Yeah, I have no use for an old woman like you anymore.
Well, if that's how you see it, there's nothing I can do.
Well, I'll pay alimony, so just embrace a lonely old age on your own.
With a smirk and an unpleasant grin, my husband observed my reaction, but he still doesn't know that his words haven't caused me any damage at all. Divorce? It was what I had expected from the beginning. As you wish. I'll grant you the divorce, so don't regret it, okay? Understood. I accepted the divorce agreement that my husband presented and signed it. My husband seemed slightly surprised at how easily I accepted the divorce. As he watched me finish filling out the paperwork,
"Make sure to submit that first thing tomorrow morning,"
he said, and returned to his room, looking satisfied. I never thought the divorce would happen so soon, but it was a good thing I had prepared. I packed up the belongings I had sorted out and contacted my son. We had talked about my son helping me when I moved out, so Timothy picked me up right away the next morning. We loaded the belongings into Timothy's car and headed straight to my new place. On the way, I submitted the divorce agreement and informed the lawyer, deciding to proceed with the procedures for claiming alimony. 3 days later, with the unpacking mostly done, I was considering inviting my son over for a meal to express my gratitude. Just as I was thinking about it, my son called. "Hello," I answered, and he informed me with a voice that seemed exasperated.
"Mom, it's about my old man. He showed up at my place and is causing trouble."
"Huh? Him?"
"Yeah, sorry, but could you come over right away?"
"I understand. I'll be there soon." After hanging up the phone, I immediately headed to my son's apartment. There, my ex-husband, who had turned pale, was slumped over. Even though only 3 days had passed, he looked drastically thinner. His complexion was obviously unhealthy, and he seemed on the verge of collapsing. Before I could inquire about what happened in the past few days, he spoke up on his own.
Laura, I messed up, so please, let's give it another shot."
"What are you talking about? You were the one who brought up the divorce."
"That was a mistake. I apologize. I won't say it again, so please forgive me."
"Were you supposed to marry that woman in her 20s?
No, that's..."
"It's impossible, right? Because you were just unilaterally infatuated and splurging on her without any reason." When I mentioned the truth, Jeffrey reacted in surprise.
"Why would you say that?"
He reacted with surprise. It's not surprising that he was taken aback. Who could have imagined that I knew all the details? I revealed that my son and I had been quietly investigating behind the scenes. I exposed that, through a lawyer, I had been preparing for a divorce well in advance. Upon learning these facts, my ex-husband turned visibly paler compared to before. His expression was that of utter despair, as if everything had crumbled.
"Please, forgive me. I'm broke now."
It seems that his favorite dancer's birthday celebration took place not long ago. In order to stand out more than other patrons, he apparently used up all his savings there. He's now in no position to pay the alimony he talked so arrogantly about. But that's not my concern. He brought all of this upon himself. I shot him a cold stare and bluntly said, "I have no intention of forgiving you now. Telling lies, deceiving, and belittling? There's no way I could start over with someone like you, right? Your circumstances don't matter. I'll make sure you pay the alimony in full, you know. Be prepared to take responsibility no matter what measures I have to take." Upon hearing my words, Jeffrey broke down in tears. However, even seeing him in such a state didn't shake my resolve. My feelings for him had completely vanished to that extent. Later, through a lawyer, the divorce was finalized and I claimed alimony from Jeffrey. Apparently, he had accumulated debts to lavish gifts on his favorite dancer. Adding insults to injury, there was alimony to me, further escalating his debts. To repay the debts, he now works part-time in addition to his regular job. He's going through rough days. On the other hand, I am spending peaceful days alone. With more time to myself compared to before, I have increased the frequency of visits to my son. We share meals and engage in light conversations. Such ordinary days bring me great happiness. From now on, I want to walk through life with my son in a way that makes me genuinely happy.